Yeah.
You also have cherry magic. Did we say that?
That's like god tier.
It's off the spectrum. Hey guys, welcome to Lovecast, the BL podcast. I'm your host, Kayla, and today with me I have Pixie and Heather. We're down one member today. It's Alexa's birthday weekend,
Yay.
so happy birthday!
Happy
birthday,
birthday! You're not here. We miss you.
But anyway, today we're going to be talking about something that I feel like we reference very often, maybe like every single episode. And it's the fact that there seems to be a spectrum when it comes to Japanese BL. So, like, you either have the BLs that are like very heavy, very angsty, and some would say toxic. And then you have the ones that are the high school lovey-dovey ones that are very lighthearted. And it's just very interesting, that dichotomy between them. So today we wanted to actually dive into it and discuss why there's such a variety, specifically in Japanese BL. But yeah, I think we wanted to start off kind of talking about the idea of toxic yaoi in general. And I see Alexa put in here that, like, when we're saying toxic, it's not to like impose that it's like morally wrong or like this, this like ethical, like negative thing. It's more of just like the fact that people are using the term toxic yaoi a lot online, to the point where it's kind of become like a meme. So, like I said, my favorite example that I've seen was someone calling Home Alone a toxic Christmas yaoi. That is my favorite. I need to send you guys that tweet. It makes me laugh every time.
Oh my God.
But the term toxic yaoi has kind of taken on a life of its own, even outside of BL, which I think is really interesting. Like, have you guys seen somebody reference a show that technically isn't yaoi as toxic yaoi? Really?
No, I haven't actually seen it.
I haven't seen it either, but I have not been in fan spaces a lot lately, so
it's a very chronically online thing, I think. Like, I'm trying to think of other examples. Interview with a Vampire is definitely toxic yaoi.
Oh,
People have been calling it
I
that.
get
I
that.
agree with that one.
I get that. Yes.
For some reason, like, every other example is out of my head. But even off of that, I've noticed that has branched off into other terms. So, like, now people are using the term old man yaoi to refer to like older, I guess, characters or actors who are in maybe like a show that could be interpreted as like homoerotic.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
like the word yaoi is being used in this way.
Yeah. I think like yaoi has always been a word like for fan use and not as much for actual queer people use, especially like in Japan.
Yeah, it's definitely
it's very rooted
fandom.
in fan behavior, fan what's it called? Colloquial
Discourse.
Yeah. Well, not always discourse either. I just like it's used
like terminology
in
and
fan spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I just wanted to point that out because I think it's just so interesting how people have taken that term and just like made it a whole thing of its own.
Can I also say toxic for me? Like a lot of people associate toxic, like the word, the description of something being toxic, to being negative, and I've never thought of it like that. I like a lot of toxic media if it's done well. Like if you're just throwing toxic in there just to shock or just to explain behavior. It needs to be done well, but I do gravitate towards that kind of media.
I think that it's kind of like how we were saying that the word yaoi, which began in fandom spaces and has now developed into this meme that transcends the Japanese BL fandom space. Um, I think that the word toxic, at least in the way that we use it as fans of queer or BL specifically, and I haven't really seen too much toxic GL yet, but I think that it has also taken on a life of its own, and the meaning has changed, because when I do think of toxic, I still see the negative connotation of the word, and I still sometimes use it, at least outside of talking about BL, I do use it as the really severe, like, negative version of the word. But when I'm talking about BL and when I talk about, like, certain things being toxic, or like certain shows being a little bit toxic but I love it anyway, it's used in like a fun way. It's used kind of like in a loving way a little bit, that it's like, oh, the show's a little bit toxic but I love it. And it's like, I'm not saying that it's super super negative. Like, if there was something happening in a show that was like not it, I would use a different word. But when I say, especially with Japanese BL, like, the show was a little bit toxic or the character was a little bit toxic, but da 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 da, it's kind of used in a way to be like, they weren't super super green flag, but I liked it, and it's okay in the context of this fictional show. Yeah, so I think that like the word, kind of like you were saying, Pixie, that you don't see it as negative at all. It's kind of it's taken on a life of its own, and it's kind of it's become, at least in our space, in our little space of the internet, in our little space of media, it's taken on a completely different sort of meaning.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to me about real life things that have happened, relationships and stuff like that, if we start describing it as a toxic relationship in real life, that is super negative. That is not okay. But in the sense of it being media, and that we need to separate a little bit about fantasy or fiction versus reality, I think toxicity in fiction is just, it can create creative plots and stories, and can allow more depth. I can never say that word. Depth. Yes. To the story and characters.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a time and place for those types of stories, and we always say that
100%.
Like, we're literally talking about the spectrum of Japanese BL. Japanese BL definitely has a spectrum.
Yes.
And like and I think because of the fact that we have the toxic on this side and then the sweet on this side, it really shows a really cool balance in the genre as well. And kind of shows there's a little bit for everyone, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I will say there are some, there's like one or two shows that I'm just like, little too far on the toxic spectrum for me. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit, but I know my boundary, so I know that that's not something I would enjoy.
I honestly think, like, I haven't seen a show that has gone beyond my, like, boundary for toxic yet.
There's one which we will talk about that I watched and I was like, what the fuck did I get myself into?
Yeah.
I was not prepared. And I think that's one thing we can either talk about now or we'll talk about it a little bit later. But when I do think that even in media, even in fiction, if you are going to have a dark or a toxic-ish or very toxic story, there needs to be some sort of warning, some sort of message to let you know what you're getting yourself into. Because there have been a few situations where we've either started watching series or we've started watching a movie or something, and what actually was happening did not have any sort of warning. And I
I
don't
get
think
that.
that's okay. I think that there needs to be some sort of warning, even if you write it into the synopsis, not as a warning exactly, but you do kind of say what's going to happen or what's going on, or like someone's super controlling, or it's really heavy on like the sexual dubious consent slash
Yeah.
non-con. Like it needs to be written in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also has a lot to do with how they're promoting the shows. Like, if you're
Yeah.
promoting it with all these like cutesy pictures
God,
and
no.
fan meets where they're just acting cute towards each other and stuff like that, and you see the show and it's just like full on dangerous drugs of sex,
That's literally the one that I had no idea what was happening. I started
I
watching and I
read the manga
Jesus
long before the show came
fucking
out, so I knew
Christ.
exactly what I was getting into, and I love that show. I'm not even kidding.
Nah, that one's a little too far across the line for me. But like, you do you, boo. You do you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that segues right into what we feel the appeal is for this toxic, quote, yaoi, aka BL.
Yeah.
So the first one I had was just like taking it back to the roots of BL and the fact that a lot of yaoi was a place for women to explore sexuality and desire in a way that they couldn't in real life. Totally just like a self-expression type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um and then Pixie, you mentioned like kind of the complexity of the characters and the plot lines. So like I feel like with the toxic BL, we're always thinking about it psychologically. Like, why is this character acting the way they are? And we get to usually see the background for why that is, so that it's a lot more in depth into the human psyche, which obviously has a lot of bad and a lot of good in it. So that's a big thing that I think is going to come up when we actually talk about the shows. And of course there's like so much room for the characters to develop. Like, are they staying
Yeah.
toxic? Are they acting toxic the whole time? Are they in their healing era by the end? It's always a toss up with that. Yeah. It's debatable. And then of course, like, messy plot lines. Who doesn't love a messy plot line?
I
It's so
love it.
fun, so entertaining. And it gives a type of, like, a lot of the time, a type of enemies to lovers type energy that obviously is like
Yeah.
such a popular trope.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
mean, most of the enemies to lovers plot that we get are really, honestly, not enemies to lovers. It's just like dislike to lovers.
Like annoyance
It's not
to lovers.
enemies.
Yeah.
Enemies
Yeah,
is a
kind of.
strong word. If you're
Mhm.
enemies, you're like holding a gun to each other's head. I don't. Just
Could
as
be
an
the case.
example.
Jesus
Could
Christ.
be.
I was gonna say,
But-
like, it's
But
always
it's more
violent when you have
dramatic
enemies, but sure.
than just disliking each other's a little bit, right? So,
Being a
I-
little
I-
annoyed by each other.
yeah. So I think like a lot of like, especially some of these shows that we're gonna talk about, do go into this more enemies territory, with more drastic situations that people usually need like a trigger warning for, because some people like people are different, people handle things differently, so, and I'm 100% for having trigger warnings, or at least having something build up to actually showing people what it's about when it's a topic as heavy as that. But yeah, I love it.
Just, I love it. That's it.
Dude, I have to explain something too. I have been I've been going for walks and stuff and had audiobooks on while walking, and I've been diving into really hardcore dark romance books. Oh, it's awesome. So it's like tolerance, right? Like spice tolerance. Like you can build your spice tolerance, and I have a really high tolerance for dark shit.
I mean, yeah, that's on brand. I feel like we all know this.
I'm just embracing it, dude.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I think
fair.
you should.
Fair. I like some of the shows that would kind of sit in the toxic realm of Japanese BL, but don't fully sit in the toxic realm of Japanese BL. Like I think I really like the stories that do have a little bit of, they're not like fully psychological. Like I feel like I do like psychological storylines just outside of my BL. Personally, outside of like my romance stories personally, but I do like what I would kind of consider like the borderline stuff. So like jealousy, a little bit of like controlling tendencies that then the person reflects and they're like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been like that. Like I like that type of toxic borderline Japanese BL. And yeah, but like something like Dangerous Drugs of Sex is a little too much for me. But also like I do see the appeal, especially because the genre, like the yaoi genre, was originally created for women to explore their sexuality and their desires. And so by doing that, you're going to write multiple different stories, and you're going to go into so many different versions of situations and scenarios. And like I get it, there is 100% a market for that, and people 100% like that. But yeah, I personally like Pixie's like all the way on that side. I feel like I kind of sit slightly middle-ish. I don't know where Kayla sits. I think Kayla sits potentially a little bit closer to the Pixie side than I do, but that's because they like really psychological stuff that really makes you start to think. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Kayla.
No, whenever you said that you like the psychological stuff, but maybe not inside of BL, I kind of feel like I'm the opposite, where I like when my different interests mesh together. So like I've said so many times, I love horror, I love like psychological thriller, I love crime. So like whenever that is taken into like the BL world, I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
I think I like the crime. I do like some of the crime stuff. I think for me, mine is when the non-con dub-con goes a step too far, in my opinion. I'm just like, maybe not. Or like when it's like super psychological, like where it's like really getting into the like nitty gritty of why people do this and why this person's a super horrible person, and why, like, I am not the biggest fan of that in this genre. I don't know. I sometimes I like when my interests collide, and sometimes I'm like, no. You've got your own little box on your own little shelf. You stay there.
I get that.
Can we go a little bit into the shows? And I want to like just go into the reason why I like Dangerous Drugs of Sex that much.
Yeah.
Which is, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a movie, right? It's been a while since I watched it, and there is a manga of it, and just this is going to be heavy topics, so if you want to skip ahead a little bit, because
major trigger warnings for sexual
trigger
content
discussions. The premise of the story is that this man is trying to unalive himself, and he gets stopped by another man who is a doctor, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
I've
I,
watched
I
it, but
think
I
I
can't
remember
remember
correctly.
anything.
Yeah.
I can't remember
So
what he
he
does.
kidnaps this man, basically, and ties him to a bed, and performs various very not consensual sexual acts to this man who wanted to take his own life. And the interesting bit here is the psychological of it all. This is like a man who wanted to unalive himself, and he was saved by his kidnapper, who is doing all this to him and also making him want to live again. So you have a
Mm.
morally gray line in all of this, which is so fascinating for me to psychologically, like, okay, so where does that switch happen? How does it happen? What is the psychological everything that makes this man finally want to live? And while there he turns to liking what is happening to him, which also, I mean, it's not great, but it's a part of like the toxicity. Like, we have a term for it, Stockholm syndrome, right? So it is like a psychological phenomenon that can happen. And I just think that like they managed to move through all of these very heavy, very bad, toxic scenarios and mindsets that when I watched that, I didn't um, see the sex for what it was. Like, it's not just sexy time. That's the only way I can describe it. It's not that. It's a tool um to explore the psychological triggers that this person is experiencing. And that's like, I don't see it as a very sexual show, because inherently the sex in it isn't sexy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I very strongly disagree, but it does. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to pose a question about dangerous drugs of sex. Like, do you actually see it as a BL, or do you see it as a piece of queer media that's just been adopted by the BL community?
No, I 100% see it as a BL. Because a lot of the tropes and the way of telling a story and everything is rooted in BL. And this is very familiar to, like, if you've read a lot of old school yaoi, you will recognize the storytelling in it, because it's very tied up in yaoi, like old school yaoi.
So then is it more yaoi than BL as we know it today? Because when we talk about BL as we know it today, we usually say that one of the biggest things about BL is that it's romantic, and there's some form of happy ending, or at least the world itself is like fantastical is not what I want to use, the word I want to use, but like it's a world in which we all queer people want to see the way our relationships are
sort of softer
expressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would classify it more like the more traditional sense of yaoi, but done in a better way. Like, one of the issues with earlier yaoi was that they were introducing a lot of heavy trigger subjects without actually giving consequences to it, not giving any explanations to it. Like there's nothing. It doesn't make sense. They're just putting it in there to because of some sort of fancy. Like I'm not going to go into the psyche of the writer. That's not fair. But they have an idea of what they want to write and they don't explain it. Right. I think Dangerous Drugs of Sex is very good at working through the trauma of what is happening and like not, it's not in there just to be like something sexy or something like for the sake of it being a BL. It's in there for the psychological trauma of it and the exploration of that psychological trauma. And that's why I'm saying that like it's not as much like focused actually on sex, but the effect of it. Like the sex isn't the focus, it's the effect the sex has on the person that's the focus.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm
I
waiting
have thought
for
a lot about this show.
I was like, Heather, response?
Yeah, interesting. I'm trying to
I
I'm trying to
completely
find the
understand why people think like you think about the show. I can completely understand that. I think one of the reasons why I had that analytical side of it when I went into it was because I read the manga. I was sort of like, there's nothing to shock me. There's nothing that's gonna shock me in that show, like that movie. Nothing. Because I like the manga is far worse or more graphic in that sense.
Yeah.
So I was like more focused on the psychological effects on everything and
Yeah.
seeing that side of it instead of the sex.
Yeah, and like I don't just see it as the sex or the sexual content. I don't just see it as that, and I don't see it as just shocking. So like when you were saying that you're not seeing, or like you were saying that you don't feel like the movie itself is wholly sexual because the sex isn't sex per se, it's sexual assault. I disagree with that quite strongly because I do believe that like the sexual content makes the makes the movie sexual, but it's sexual assault, and it's not like, to me, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, this guy kidnaps this person who did want to unalive himself, but then is like, I can save you through assaulting you and through doing all these things to you that you don't want, and that's how I'm going to save you. And to me, that's it's quite violating, and I don't
I don't disagree with that.
yeah, and like I don't see this whole storyline sitting in BL. And so I'm like, when I go into it and I watch it and I'm just like, oh no, this was not something that should have been recommended to me through the BL community, unless I was ready to watch something that was like wholly dark and twisted per se. And so then for me, I'm like, oh Jesus Christ,
that is a little bit interesting because Japanese BL in itself, if you're getting on the like more toxic side of it, there are a lot of BLs that are very much outside of what we're used to
Are you
watching,
talking
especially
like the
from
written?
Yeah, just like the darkness of it. Like you can get more of like a queer media feeling from it. I did have like, when I first started watching it, I was sort of unsure, what is this? like where do you put this in like the categories? But I'm still like firmly in place that this is BL, just like the oh god, what's it called, the mouse something
Oh, the
cheese,
cheese
the
something.
cornered mouse
Oh,
dreams of cheese, I think it is.
yeah.
Like
Mm.
that is
I
an
haven't seen that one.
extremely dark psychological BL that reminds me more of queer media than it does BL, but it still has the elements of, like I was saying, like more traditional yaoi in it. And
Mm.
and I know that the Japanese fandom sorry, classify it. The Japanese fandom classifies it as BL as well because
Mm.
they've had award shows and all of that, and both of these shows have been in those award shows.
Yeah, fair.
And they are, from what I know, they are written by women as well.
Mm.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it one of the reasons why I think Japanese, having this discussion about Japanese, the spectrum of Japanese BL, is because I think that they are pushing the envelope a lot on these toxic shows that are different from what we're used to watching
Mm.
in our usual rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think that like using dangerous drugs of sex in this conversation is because it's so like I feel like it's like right at the end. It's like, or at least if you're looking at like the scale, it's like right at the
Mhm.
beginning, right at the beginning um of this like
I mean,
spectrum scale.
yeah,
It's the most, I feel like it's one of the most polarizing ones. Like when you start looking at some
definitely.
of the other series like My Personal Weatherman,
Mm.
My Beautiful Man,
The novelist.
those oh yeah, even the
Mm.
novelist, those start to have less in your face
Mm-hmm.
types of or like less severe, I would say, types of
Mm.
toxic
I will
plot
argue.
lines.
I will argue that My Beautiful Man actually, like, I would classify that as like just as toxic, just not sexual toxicity.
I
Dude,
definitely
they
disagree
are they
because
are two of the most toxic people in the history of BL. It's just not like portrayed as very sexual toxicity.
yeah, but they also don't
Mm.
kidnap each other.
Ooh.
Um like that's not sexual. That's literally holding someone against their
It
will.
could have happened. They could have. I'm just saying.
Mm.
Hmm. Hmm. Much to think about. I don't know. I've never been like really strict on categorization when it comes
Yeah.
to what's BL, what's not. Like because I think because we've seen so many people say like this thing is too good to be BL, and that
Oh
has
god, I
really
hate
like
Yeah,
that.
turned
that's
me
fair.
off from people like
I don't like
being
that.
strict with
Mm.
categorization. My brain does make me almost, when it comes to dangerous drugs of sex, my brain like kind of doesn't associate it with BL, even though it is
Yeah.
technically. I
Mm-hmm.
guess that is because it's so much, it's so
Mm-hmm.
heavy, and like specifically the like sexual assault realm, which is something else that I really am like I'm wary on like the portrayals of
Yeah.
it depending. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like I don't
But
have an
I
opinion either way.
I
Mm.
mean, non-con and dubcon have been like the cornerstones of earlier yaoi.
But it doesn't mean that it needs to, and this I guess is like kind of stepping out a little bit of the topic and getting more into like non-con and dub-con and should we have it and
Mm-hmm.
like the morals of these tropes and da da da. Like yes, it may be kind of where a lot of like BL as we know it began,
Yeah.
but doesn't
It's
mean
evolved.
that
Yes.
it needs to, I guess, like, yes, there is a time and place, and Dangerous Drugs and Sex has that, and that's fine. I'm not saying that the creation of the show itself is like inherently bad, but I don't think that, like, yeah,
Yeah,
it needs to
you
be
need to remember that Dangerous Drugs of Sex is a very niche corner of BL. Like, there's no denying that it's not like it's not in the forefront. Like, it's just like with romance, you have dark romance, you have like there are niches within underneath the whole. So
Yeah.
I would like say that it's an outlier. Like, it isn't a common thing to see, especially nowadays. But I do think like it has its own place in the fandom, and I'm not saying that I would like every show to be like this, but I like that we do get some of these that are different and dive into very, 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 very dark corners of the human psyche. I find that interesting.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be exploring these types of things, or saying, like, I'm not having any moral argument with this, at least at this point in our episode. I think I'm just saying that, at least for me, like, if we're talking about it, and giving you voice to saying how much you love it and why you love it, I think for me to be able to voice my opinions as well, and just say, like, this is, it's something that I'm like, a little too far for me when talking about the spectrum. Sorry, oh my God, my voice is going again. 2 seconds. Is that better? No, it's worse. All right, we're just running with this. When talking about the spectrum of Japanese BL, I think that is just a step too far for me, because
That's
of a
fair.
multitude of reasoning. But stepping up a little bit, actually, I feel like Takumi-kun is between My Personal Weatherman, My Beautiful Man, and Dangerous Drugs of Sex, because there's a couple of things that happen in that movie
Wait,
series.
can
that
someone
you're like,
remind me what happens in Takumi-kun? Because I feel like I've seen it, but I can't remember it.
Yeah, it's like OG. So it's how I found BL. Basically, the story is, I can't remember everyone's name, so I'm just gonna, this guy goes to this boarding school. And he doesn't like being touched. He doesn't like being around people. He's like a bit homophobic. He's like, no. And he maybe was he? I don't know. He meets this other guy. And they end up having a relationship. They fall in love, whatever. But like, the biggest thing that happened, trigger warning, and the reason why the guy who didn't like to be touched had a lot of like trauma is because he was sexually assaulted by his brother when he was young. And that brought on a lot of like trauma and not wanting to be touched and all that sort of stuff. And then there's some like dubious like dubcon stuff between the two main leads, and then there's a lot of like dubcon between the second pair, I believe, I don't think they were in the first movie, but maybe they're in the second. I can't remember the timeline. The movies all like blur together for me. And then like the movies go through like their relationship and how Gi. I think it's like Takumi or Takumi and like Gi. I think Gi is one of the guys' names.
Sure.
Sure. Don't know why that was like buried in the back of my brain. And then some of it is like kind of unpacking a little bit of that trauma throughout the movies, and kind of like I think he talks about it, or he mentions it to his parents or his mum or something, because they always thought that the brother was like this big amazing thing, and actually he was assaulting his little brother. And yeah. that's kind of what I remember. And then yeah,
Mhm.
like Gi and Takumi-kun end up together, and there's some dubcon, and yeah, it's been a
Mhm.
while since I've watched it.
Yeah, that's all I remember from it too, is the
Yeah,
dubious consent parts.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, that it's what like drew you into BL.
It's one of
I,
the first ones that I watched, and I was like,
yeah,
whoa, this is
it
interesting.
is very interesting to see how our um thoughts around BL has changed from what drew us into BL, because especially like with series and live action, like um Tharn Type was my first, and
Mm.
it's like a lot of the same that you were talking about there, and it's so interesting to think
Different, but
back,
yes.
because I have nostalgic love for that show, but I don't think it's a good show now.
Yeah.
I will always have that nostalgic love for it, but I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's all about like the consequences, the psychological reasonings behind everything. And I mean, sometimes you do create your own narrative to the show you're watching. And I think that's honestly, it's fair. But I do think like, at times there is an unhealthy um, fixation on the fantasy, and not like uh, mm, not separating the reality versus fantasy of it all, which isn't great. But I do think like if we're gonna just jump into the last from a production standpoint, if we feel these shows are responsible in terms of trigger warnings and all of that, I do think I don't I do feel shows should have trigger warnings and stuff, but I don't think it's a show's um and I do like think they need to, if you're gonna tell a story, you need to tell it properly. You need to have like consequences. It needs to be like, if you're gonna be make a show toxic, you need to have a reason for it to be toxic. But I don't think it's the show's responsibility to make sure that the fans aren't separating, like the fans are separating reality versus fantasy. I think that it's people's own responsibility to separate fantasy from reality.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
I
sense?
agree, but I do think that it is the show, or like the production's responsibility to make sure that things are rated correctly,
Yes.
to help with that. So it's not
Yes.
completely their responsibility to literally tell someone they need to think critically about something, or they need to remember that fiction is fiction. I think that's just as a whole, like everyone as a whole, fandom as a whole, media as a whole, it's like a whole responsibility to be like, guys, let's just remember fiction's fiction, reality's reality. Yes, sometimes fiction can influence reality, and reality can influence fiction. It's not always a like clear cut line down the middle, but you as a media watcher needs to have some form of like critical thinking, or just like the bare minimum of, I am watching something that's fiction. I am watching something
thinking.
that's based in reality, if it's like a documentary or whatever. Documentaries aren't always, that's a whole other argument, whatever. But yeah, I do think that at least from like a production standpoint, they're responsible for trigger warnings and they're responsible for ratings. And then from there, and also how they market these shows.
Yeah.
Because we were saying before, if you're going to, like, imagine if Dangerous Drugs of Sex had a low rating, no trigger warnings, and was marketed as like a Thai BL comedy.
Oh, a
Oh my
handsome
God. I would be
doctor
outraged.
saves this working
Right.
man from dying, and they fall in love.
Oh my God. Like,
Oh, Lord.
imagine. So, like, there is a responsibility there. But if you're, I guess it's kind of like, I don't want to get too far into my feelings on horror movies, but sorry, Kayla. But, like, it's imagine if, like, like, an American horror movie had a rating of, M, which, like, what is it? Is M, I think we figured out was, like, PG-13 in America?
I
M
don't
for
remember
Australia is like you got to be 15 or over to buy the ticket.
I can't remember.
Whatever that, like,
I can't remember.
roughly. Imagine if, like, a horror movie was rated like that, and it was none of the, like, ridiculously scary or, like, triggering parts were in the synopsis, was in the marketing, and then kids went and watched this movie in the cinemas. Like, the effect from that would be ridiculous, like, horrible. It could like horribly affect, like, kids. So I think that if some of these shows were marketed like that or rated like that, there would be an issue there. But I haven't really come across anything, at least Japanese BL wise, that was ever rated incorrectly.
I think most of the times, actually, I think BLs are usually rated too high. Like, I will agree for the shows that we're talking about now, they need a high rating, especially Dangerous Race of Sex. It needs the highest rating because that's a lot of trauma to put on someone.
Jesus Christ.
But
maybe just some extra trigger warnings would be nice.
Yeah. But we do know from when we talked about this before on an episode, ratings in media, like
in general,
BLs, in general, queer content is rated really high for what it is. Like, you get really soft BLs with barely a kiss in it, and they're rated like PG-13, whatever, up. And it's just like, why?
Yeah. I do think, though, that some of the rating, actually, I haven't checked too far into it, so maybe this is a bad take. But I was going to say, I think some of the ratings have gotten a little bit better. They haven't backdated ratings, though, which is not good, because I think some of the ratings are better, but I could be wrong. I'm going to go to Vicky now and check. What's a sweet BL?
I mean, if you take Heartstopper, it's rated 13 and up. I honestly think that is
season
high.
3. I think season 3 would have
I
made it
agree,
rated
season
13
3,
and
but
up.
this says like Heartstopper season 1 is rated 13 and up. And I think that is being too much.
Is it PG? If it's PG for me, that's basically just means, let me check what rating it is for me, because G only means it's for children and there is an educational element, and then PG is the next one up. So at least for me, if it's PG, where's Heartstopper, that would make sense.
So the explanation here is that it's multiple scenes of bullying and harassment. There is a non-consensual kiss. There are conversations and events in connection to eating disorder and self-harm.
Actually, maturity rating M. So just M for mature themes. That's the same for me.
Dude, I let my kid read Heartstopper, the comic. She's 9. It was fine. She understood it.
Yeah, M the whole time. So that's, Okay, I feel like Heartstopper, as, like, saying that it's for mature audiences, that's not putting an age limit on it. If it was, like, M15 plus or something where it's actually putting, like, an age limit. But, like, saying that it's
I think
just,
it depends on the country you're from if they've actually put the
correct
age
sort
on
of
there.
rating. Yeah. See, I feel like Heartstopper has rated something saying like, hey guys, this has got mature themes. Just know. It's kind of like how we're saying you need to have like some form of trigger warning, or like you need to tell people what is going to be in it so they're not like, so they know what they're getting into. I do think that like in terms of Heartstopper saying, hey, there are some mature themes because there's like eating disorder and a lot of talk around that. There's a lot of talk around mental health, that type of stuff. I think just being like, hey,
well, it is a
this
show
is in
showing teenagers, so it might like, but I would rather have it like recommended for teens than having the ratings be like, whoa. But
See, M for
going
me
back,
is recommended for teens.
yeah, that's not
So I
how
guess it's like the
ratings
different
work in
countries.
Norway.
Yeah.
But going back to Japan, I know from, I don't remember who told me, but someone that lived in Japan told me that most BLs in Japan are behind like a age wall.
Yeah.
That you need to go to the restricted section to even BLs that don't have sexual content
Yeah.
is restricted,
Yeah.
hidden.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it's just like,
That's more a comment on the society and how queerness is seen.
yeah.
I feel like that's more
And
a
that's
comment on
different
that
from
than a
each
comment
country.
on the trigger warnings or
Like
rating
I
the
can
shows for the
bet
content.
I can bet there's a lot of manga and stuff that was banned along with like the US book ban, the craze that was or is still going around from the libraries.
Yeah. I'm just absorbing everything you guys are talking about. This is a little off topic, but this kind of reminds me about how when I was talking to a friend of the show, Bam Bam, when I last saw her, she was telling me that some high schools invited her as a speaker based off of her BL novels, and she turned them down because she was like, that is not appropriate for them to be consuming.
Interesting.
It reminded
I like
me
that.
of that.
I like that. I do think like if you read her books that she do well, Thai BLs in general do tend to go towards the more mature end of things. And well, it depends. Like, how old are you in high school? Like, it's
13 to 18.
Okay, because high school here is 13 to 16, and then you go into higher education. So if someone asked me to go talk to a bunch of 13 to 15-year-olds about what we do here, like I would probably say no to that as well, because that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
But my experience with BL is very in an adult space. I connect my BL experiences with adult spaces, and there are room for teenagers, there are room for everyone as long as they keep to the content that is meant for them. But
which is where trigger warnings and ratings come in.
Yes. But I don't like it when teenagers get into adult spaces, even though I did it myself when I was a teenager.
Right. No, same. I think we all did.
Yeah.
It's like it's weirdly like a rite of passage to be in an adult space when you're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, especially again, bring it back to spectrum of Japanese BL, especially when we get into this side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Your ratings are quite important. And I do think going back to, from a production standpoint, are the shows responsible for trigger warnings and ratings? Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000,000%.
Yes.
So, if we wanted to just like mention some of the other shows that we had down, I've
Mhm.
never heard of this one, but Happy of the End. I
I
have no
don't.
idea what that is.
What was that one?
I think it's one of the. Wait, no, I can't remember. I don't think I've seen that one, and I don't think I've seen the last one on our list either. But I've seen the
All
other
right.
ones.
Oh,
I
I have stuff to
synopsis.
say about the last one, but we'll
Okay.
get to that.
So, happy of the end. Dazed and confused, Chihiro awakes on a pile of garbage with memories of wedding still
Oh,
fresh in his
okay.
mind. When
Mm.
out of the blue, a young
Yeah.
man named Kieto appears before him. Instantly, he then recalls the night he spent with this person, the booze, the hotel, the punch to his face. Why does that sound familiar?
Listen,
Chihiro may not have a
it's
place to
very
call home
recent.
currently, and
I've seen
Kieto
it.
may not have
Well, I haven't
be a good.
finished it. I hated it. I genuinely hated that show because there was no reason why the stuff that is happening is happening. It might have been explained in other episodes, but it made no sense anything of what was happening.
Yeah, I have not seen that one. I cannot speak
Yeah.
to
No,
it
they were
at
gonna
all.
do sexy time, and he just clocks him and throws him in the garbage and just comes back a couple of days later and he wakes up and they have an argument. And then they start working together. That's how far I got.
I wonder if Alexa has seen that. She's the one who put that down. I was like, I've never heard of this in my life.
That is not up Alexa's
I
alley at
know.
all.
That's why
Maybe
I'm like,
because it was newer. Like I did see a couple of clips go round.
Might be.
Twitter.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
It wasn't good. Well, I don't think
I'll
it
take
was
your
good.
word for it. My personal weatherman, I would consider it toxic, even though they technically had like a contract thing going on where he was sort of like a slave, basically, like a house husband to the weatherman guy. But inherently, there's something really toxic about that because I'm like, what was he benefiting from that other than, I guess, being around this guy that he likes? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
and then because of the like, oh my god, what's it called? The unreliable like narrator. Because of that side of the series as well. You, at least for me, when you're watching it, you're like, did he fully know what he was getting himself into when he agreed to this?
Agreed
Because
to
that's
that.
also
Yeah.
Because that's also another
because
element
he
that makes
does
it
seem
like
very confused to what is happening at all times. Yeah.
Yeah. My Beautiful Man, do we consider that completely toxic?
Yes.
I feel like I do.
Yeah.
Even
100%.
season 2.
yeah,
100%. And it's the
it's in the
best kind of
spectrum.
toxic.
It's in the spectrum.
Yeah,
I love these very not perfect people so much.
Well, I love My Beautiful Man. I was gonna say, even in season 2 when they're like healing, or even in like the movie, when they're healing, it's still, they still have their moments where you're like, you see them for who they are.
I mean, they do grow a lot in the progress, and it does help getting oh god, what's his name? Not here. God, Kioi. Yeah, it does help getting Kioi's side of things. When you get that, it's just like an eye opener. But yeah, I think the reason why I love this so much is because you get such a look into what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing, and it's just so interesting, and they are weirdly lovable even in their toxicity. And they're just like, these two people are super toxic, both of them. They deserve each other.
I was gonna say, I like how they both have issues because
Yeah.
it weirdly levels the playing ground.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of the toxic BLs, there's one person who kind of has a power dynamic over the other one.
Yeah.
But in My Beautiful Man, I like that they both are very
They're
flawed, and it's,
even. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Dude.
pretty even in their
Yeah.
issues.
Hmm.
It's interesting to watch.
It is.
The Novelist. That one, I think it's toxic because they kind of have like a boss slash
Yeah.
tutor type thing going on, and then
Mm.
it is slightly dubious at the beginning. And then if you've
Mm.
seen Mood Indigo, then they kind of also had a slave type thing going on where he was like, the novelist was doing things that the publisher said so that he could like
Right
progress
about
in
it.
his career, basically. So yeah, definitely toxic.
It is a
Um
common trope in stories with novelists and their whatever helper. Though
mhm.
read a lot of those mangas.
Yeah. Even though I've seen the show a couple times, I can't remember a lot of the details.
Yeah, me
Uh,
neither, honestly.
no. And then The Shortest Distance is Round. I didn't actually watch this one, but I remember all the discourse about it when it came out because this one is crazy. Like, it's basically like this student, he has a teacher like who likes him, and the teacher makes a move on him and he like rejects him. Like he doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
um and then like I guess it skips forward and he ends up being a male prostitute,
Mm.
and he meets the teacher again while he's a male prostitute, and basically I guess kind of in like the vein of Playboy almost, they're showing like the dark side of like the male escorting world. So it seems like it has everything in it. Like I was reading reviews of it, and I guess there's like torture in it and stuff, and obviously there's sexual assault, like literally any triggering thing you could imagine, it seems like was in this movie. Which is why I never watched it. But
I
yeah,
feel
I
like I
think it's
should
safe to
watch
say it's
this.
toxic. You can report back to us on that.
Okay, okay. I'll do the research. I'll do the research.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the toxic yaoi because there's just so much to cover about it. But of
It is so
course,
interesting.
yeah. There's the other side of the spectrum, which is the dreamy youth romance. Think of like Kieta Hatsukoi, that type of thing. Uh, very, very quintessential, like I would say like basic Japanese BL. There are a
Mm.
lot of shows that even from other countries use that kind of like high school romance archetype and
Mm.
make it their own. So like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like My School President. Um, but the appeal of youth romance is pretty straightforward. Like there's so much nostalgia in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're kind of an older fan, a BL hag, if you will, looking back at your youth, and you're like,
You
wow,
don't need
I
to
miss
call us
that
all out like
time.
that, Kayla.
It's fine. It's fine. Um, there's that, and then there's also the other side of it where it's like if you never got to really experience that in
Mm.
your
Mm.
youth, it's kind of like living vicariously through it, which is for the
Mm.
case with me for a lot of them. Is I think especially when you're queer,
Yeah.
whether you are aware of that or not, it kind of like
Mm.
maybe like holds you back or stunts your growth in ways where you don't actually end up experiencing something like a high school romance.
Yep.
So either way, it's like very nostalgic, I feel. And then yeah,
100%.
queer youth romance. So important. So important. Um and obviously they're usually simple and easy to digest. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are so many of these shows that I think of as palate cleansers.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially because um a lot of other countries are like starting to delve into heavier topics, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
if you want to call it that, kind of going back and watching one of these like Japanese high school BLs is very refreshing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're stressed out a lot of the time like me. Um and yeah, the themes are never too much. Like there's never too much
Mhm.
to them. Like obviously you could like analyze the themes in it or whatever and psychoanalyze the characters kind of in the same way as toxic BL, but
Mhm.
there's not really any like heavy consequence to anything that's happening, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think there's not like a lot of incentive to start analyzing things and stuff like that, because it's just simple, and that makes it also, it's easier to watch, especially if you've had a heavy day, or you just feel your head is exploding or something. Sometimes you just need easy. Sometimes like it's such an important thing to have, even for me who tend to lean towards the heavier side of things. I also need to watch something that's just easy to watch, just fun, cute. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, some examples we had of that are I Cannot Reach You, which is the one that was on Netflix. I thought that was
The
really cool that
one
it ended
we
up.
can't
Mm.
remember.
We can't remember it, but I do feel that it's
It
important that
was
it made it
cute.
on Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, obviously, we were a little critical of it in
Yeah, we
our
have a
review.
review of it, so go watch that. It's very in depth and very detailed, and that
Maybe.
was a little bit sarcastic, but
Mhm.
I do like, sometimes you just connect with shows on like a feeling level that I can't really remember what it was about. I can't remember anything that happened. I can't remember the names of anyone, but I can remember that I had a good time watching it. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I guess with this side of the spectrum, it could be harder to stand out in terms of the story because a lot of
mhm.
them have similar themes to the point where the storyline is almost the same.
Yeah.
Um like there's also the Takara-kun and Amagi-kun, which I did watch, but I also can't remember anything about, unfortunately.
I know I watched that. What's it about?
It's another one where they're classmates.
Is
And I
that
think is
is
it?
that the one that one of them like died or something?
Is it?
Is that the zombie one?
Wait, what? Wait, actually, no. Is it? That
Which
might
one was the
actually.
zombie one?
Is it not that one?
Okay,
No.
okay. I cannot remember the name of the zombie
This one
one,
is
but
the
it was cute, the zombie one.
this one is the secret dating one. So like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amagi is I don't know if you'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Okay, okay. Yeah, I
Amagi,
can't remember what it's about, but I remember those two. Yeah.
Takara,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they the popular high school student, which is Takara, like starts to develop a bit of a crush on Amagi, and like he's separate. He like has like one or two friends, Amagi, and then they kind of the popular guy, where are we? Takara starts to kind of become friends with Amagi a little bit, and then they start to date. They date in secret, and it's very much a cute, sweet, like first crush, first love type of story. Yeah,
Um, if
a lot of
anyone
rooftops.
listening to this remembers what the show I'm talking about when I say
Oh,
zombie, and
so that one.
and that's a youth one too, and it's very cute. If you remember what that one is called, please let us know in the comment section, because honestly, it should be on this list.
I totally forgot about that one.
I can't remember. Like, he dies, right? And they're just like together.
Yeah, so he's
and...
hit by a car on the side of the road, and then
Yes!
he's brought back. Then he like comes back to life.
Yes.
Let me find it.
Cannot remember the name.
Oh my
But
god.
it was really cute, and they have a lot of these scenes just walking along the street, like.
And then he goes back to death. He dies again.
He dies.
Because he can only be like he's only like reanimated.
Yeah.
He's not exactly. He's a zombie, but he's not like a zombie.
Technically, he is a zombie, right? But they never say
like
zombie.
He's reanimated, so like he doesn't. Yeah. Love is.
And they
is
fall
love
in
is better the
love
second
while
time around?
he's
No, that's
reanimated, and then he has to die. Like, it's very sad.
Yeah, like to be it's gonna be like released back to the.
But it's pretty
everything.
creative and beautiful, honestly. Like, I watched that whole thing. I think it came out last year.
Yeah, I'm literally just like searching through Viki because it's like
yeah,
it was
I
on
tried
Viki.
searching zombie BL, but I did not get anything.
That sounds like something I would watch too. I don't know how that like slipped under my radar.
Is it Tokyo? No, that's not that one. Wait.
Oh wait,
I will
is
find
he
it.
dead or alive? Question mark. Yes, there it is. Wait, why doesn't it say the name of it?
It's a
Why
mystery.
can I not find it in Viki? I watched it in Viki.
It's literally the. Is the name of it? Is he dead or alive?
No. A sweet one though that's not on the list was Jack of Frost. Eternal
it's
Yesterday?
Not that one. What?
Yes, Eternal Yesterday.
Yes.
Is
yes.
it that one?
Yeah,
Yes.
Eternal Yesterday.
It should be on.
Yeah,
this
I
list.
literally was like speed reading the synopsis, and it was like da 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 da. A truck slams into, and I'm like, yep, that's it. That's the one.
Yep.
I will say
Eternal
I did.
Yesterday.
I did have Jack O'Frost in my mind, but I didn't know where to put it. Like, I didn't know if it would go in toxic or if it was in between.
It is in between, honestly.
It wasn't toxic.
Dude, it was
Was
toxic.
I don't remember. Let me go back. I just
Like, the
remember
whole
liking it.
backstory of them is toxic.
Wait a second.
Yeah, I couldn't decide where to put it.
Oh,
and
the
I was
memory
like,
loss
maybe
stuff.
not.
Wait,
and then,
memory
like,
loss.
he pretends like everything is okay because he lost his memory, and he just, like, basically gaslit him throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember that aspect of it.
I wouldn't place that into the toxic side of
Dude, Delulu.
I
think it's in between.
I was gonna say I would put it more in
It's
between. I wouldn't put it in the toxic side.
Yeah,
of
no, I agree.
Japanese
like,
girl. I
I
wouldn't
was
call
thinking,
myself Delulu, not wanting to put it there.
I was thinking about it when we were talking toxic, but I was just like, yeah, no, it's not. It doesn't fit into the toxic category. It's somewhere in between.
Spectrum. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
so,
Eternal Yesterday should be on that list.
I totally forgot about that one. Yeah.
It's a good one.
So I feel like everyone knows Keita Hatsukoi. When I think of Japanese BLs, that's one of the first ones that come to my mind. It's like one of those ones that's like you absolutely have to watch. And it's also one of those ones that I would recommend watching to get into BL. It's a good gateway, I guess. Because it has like all of the classic BL tropes, but it's a little more interesting, I think, than the other school themes that are in here. Mr. Unlucky has no choice but to kiss. I really liked this one, but I can't remember again what really happened, other than he has bad luck and the guy brings him good luck. And that's the theme.
I thought it was boring.
I don't remember that one.
I watched the whole thing, I'll say that, but I did think it was a little bit boring. Like, it was really slow paced, but yeah.
I think there's something, at least like when we're talking about these, like this spectrum of Japanese BL, I think the biggest appeal is the fact that they are easy watching. So some could say boring, and others could say that it's like the slice of life type of stories. You're just kind of dropped in and you just experience it along with them. You don't need the massive highs and the massive lows. It's just something that you experience alongside them. So that could kind of lend to, if people, my hair's going crazy, if people are usually gravitate towards the super high, super low roller coaster types of shows, when dipping their toe into this side of this side of the scale of Japanese BL, yes, it might be a little bit boring for them, but like for others, it brings the excitement that the roller coaster brings for the people who prefer the roller coaster, because some people find excitement through the slice of life, the just kind of experiencing these first love stories, or these like sweet high school stories. Yeah, which I think is like such a big, it's such a big driver of the appeal for this side, these like nostalgic, sweet stories. Yeah, which I find fascinating at times, because like with this spectrum, it is literally like these right up here on this high side are very just, I don't know, like it's like walking, like just one foot in front of the other, plodding along, enjoying the story, and then on the other side it's like, holy shit, we are literally on a roller coaster. I'm about to go down this like massive thing, and I'm going back up and riding the highs and the lows. And then you've got your like your in-betweens, which I think a lot of people sit at the in-betweens, more than the like super one side of the spectrum types of ones.
I added I Hear Sunspot to our soft youth romance list as well, because it's a newer one, and I think like it's still it's university setting, but it's very like the developing of friendship into love, which is like classifying of this youthful romance. And I haven't finished it the show yet, but I did read the manga, and it's one of my favorite mangas. I just think like it's a beautiful story.
Basically, with soft youth romance, you're never really gonna get overstimulated watching them. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. But the ones that exist in the middle, I feel like there are a lot more than I was able to think of. But the first one that I thought of was The End of the World with You, which I've said before, I really enjoyed that one. And it's basically that like the toxicity in that one comes from, I guess, the fact that everyone is depressed and they're kind of not treating each other that well because they are all sad, not satisfied in their lives, I guess. They all have their own reasons why they're not satisfied with their lives. And then suddenly you have this like cataclysmic event that's supposed to happen, and they kind of are having to like reconcile with how they felt like they almost like want to die, but now it's like, oh, I actually think I want to live. So yeah, there's a lot of toxicity that specifically with the pairing, the two main characters, they go back and forth quite a bit.
I will say that show is probably one of the ones that go into what triggers me, because I had massive anxiety watching it.
Really?
I could not handle the like ever impending doom that was happening in slow emotion. Like I had so like I watched it, I got through it, but like it I felt it in every fiber of my being. I was so anxious watching the whole thing.
That's one where I would say even like from the middle to the end of the series, and it's not like a very long series, they make peace with like themselves and their life, and because they're thinking they're gonna die, so it's kind of like, well, let's just accept things and let's forgive each other and let's just like be good to each other during this time that we have. Let's like love each other or whatever. So it turns into this wholesome type relationship that the main characters and this group that they're roaming with have. So that's why I feel like, even though in the beginning the whole plot is basically the one character is using the other,
Yeah.
like not being very upfront with his feelings and kind of like two-timing him, it kind of fizzles out into, I don't know, something that is definitely not anywhere near the other toxic shows we talked about. Like the
Yeah, I
severity
agree.
is very much on the lower side, but it still is there a little bit.
Agreed.
And then the other one, Life, Love on the Line, also sits in the middle for me because it's the same type of thing where, well, actually it's the opposite in a way, because they start off very like wholesome in the
Youthful
way
and
of, yeah, the youth romance. Like the beginning of the show very much fits into the soft youth romance side of the spectrum, but then as they grow up, it starts to teeter on the toxic side. But again, I would say even less toxicity than The End of the World with You, because a lot of it is just like growing pains, and them growing apart from each other and realizing that like maybe they don't want the same things out of life, maybe they shouldn't be together, stuff like that. So that's
pressure
why
of
I feel,
society.
yeah, that one kind of lands in the middle too, if you wanted to categorize it in the spectrum. But
Yeah.
did you
It's
guys have any other ones? I really couldn't
Jack of
think.
Frost.
Jack of Frost. Yeah.
Jack of Frost. Yeah.
Let me get my list back up.
I know there are so many. Oh, another one that I wasn't sure where to
Old-fashioned
categorize.
cupcake.
Yeah.
Where would we put
That
that?
one.
Because it's not youthful. Well, it's technically not youthful romance, but it is a soft, sweet romance. I would put it right up in the top of the spectrum. Oh, top bottom. We shouldn't say top bottom spectrum. Just because it's like some people might, well, that, but also some people might
don't
think
misunderstand
that
us.
the super psychological, oh, my headphones are going a bit weird. The super psychological ones are top for them. But yeah, I would put into the dreamy romance, old-fashioned cupcake.
I think
It's
so.
not, it's like realistic, but, well, realistic
But
romance,
it is
but like
very
it's not.
soft. Like
Yeah, it's soft.
And
It's
there's
romantic.
Yeah. I don't think that there are any like heavy toxic plots or stuff happening. I think they handle the whole situation very well. I think it's one of the better ones at handling the whole boss versus worker relationship. You also have Cherry Magic. Did we say that?
That's like God tier.
It's off the spectrum.
Has its own category.
Is it Tokyo in April is spring or something? Is that what that one is? Tokyo in April is. It just says is. I can't remember if it's like is spring or is something.
Oh
no,
yeah,
I think
Tokyo
it's just
is
that.
April.
Tokyo in April is.
It has a really weird name. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I watched it, but I can't remember what's it about.
I remember watching it too and I've completely lost it. It's something about being childhood best friends, then reuniting a decade later because they work at the same company. And they just have to reconnect. I don't think there's like... I don't remember it being like super, super toxic, but there's an R18 plus on it. But that could just be Vicky.
Yeah. I don't know.
Let's be
I was
real.
also trying to place Kaibe Koji because it's like just comedy. I didn't know where that would fit.
And you have the one, the one with the long, the guy who ends up in a BL world.
The man that defies the world of BL.
Yeah, that's straight comedy.
Yeah,
it's a Candy Color Paradox.
Ooh, that's an interesting
Where
one.
do you think you'd put that one?
Because it is slightly like it has some toxic traits to it.
Some storylines in there that
it can be.
Is that a middle?
I think it's a middle. Yeah,
maybe.
I wouldn't say that it's a pure toxic show.
Yeah, agreed. What else?
There are some newer ones. I haven't finished it. The cosmetic play lover. It was very confusing, so I don't know what my thoughts about that one is. Takara's Treasure?
There are so many shows.
What were the show where okay. There's a show or an episode, like there's a show that has different episodes where different things happen. And one of them went crazy viral because of the two guys in it, and they're in like a living room and they're doing stuff. Fuck, I can't remember what it's called.
That could be like anything.
The game, like badly described synopsis of badly described shows. I'm like, you're literally saying any show.
I know. I can't remember what it's called, but someone will know what I mean. There were like clips of this because the leads are so beautiful that it's insane. And I remember it wasn't available for international viewing at the beginning.
Oh, the does it have dog in the title or something?
I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about. Let me find.
Ooh, Osan's Love?
Just pure comedy. Pure comedy. Just pure comedy. Oh dear. I know exactly which one you were talking about for the... Let me find it. I swear it's called like... I swear dog is in the title somewhere.
Yeah, I cannot even begin to think what the title is. I just remember...
Oh, shit.
That scene. It's so weird what, like, gets attached to my brain. I feel like I'm forgetting a show that I love. I feel like there's...
There's something that we're missing. There's something that we're missing 100%. And everyone in the comments is going to be like screaming at us the one that we've missed.
Please scream
Sugar Dog Life.
At us. That might be it.
Sugar Dog Life.
Sugar Dog Life?
Yes.
That's an interesting title.
I knew the dog was in the title. Yeah, there was like no international release.
Did they ever make a show of twittering birds? I felt like I heard that that was coming out.
What?
A what now?
Twittering birds never fly. It's like the number one BL in Japan. They were
I
gonna
don't.
make a show
If they
of it.
kept the
Did they
title,
not?
I don't remember that at all.
Usually people just call it Twittering Birds because that's everyone knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know that title.
I know it's there's an anime of it, but I thought they were doing a live action too. I can't find any. That would have gone into toxic, honestly.
Yeah, there's
I
so
love
many
it.
out there. Like, and the
So
spectrum
many.
is so wide.
Yeah,
that you
and
can
they're
just
doing
kind of place.
Love in the Air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is Love in the Air gonna land on that?
If you go by the Thai version, it would be on the verge of toxic.
I think that so I'm in two minds about it. I'm like, are they going to try and put it, like, make it sit in the soft youth romance side? Like, are they going to try and make it another Kieta Hatsukoi? Like, are they going to try to make it like that type of thing and get that side of the audience? Or are they going to lean into
Tokyo
the
Drift.
tropes that are in the Thai BL version, and it's going to kind of tip the scale and put it a little bit further into the toxic spectrum that we were talking about?
I think if it's gonna be a success, I think they need to lean into the toxicity of it.
I don't know how it's
even
gonna
though
turn
like
out.
it's one of the lesser toxic shows that MAME has put out there, honestly. If you compare it to her other shows.
I feel like they don't need to super lean into the toxic tropes for it to be popular. Like, if they kind of straddle, I think it'll be more popular if they straddle the line. So I kind of like how the Thai BL version has a couple of elements which maybe jump that line, but I think if they straddle that line and have everyone questioning, like the Thai BL version did, whether or not the portrayals were toxic or not, I think that's going to make it more successful than just kind of going one version or the other. Because there's going to be more people talking about it, and people are going to read into it differently.
The draw of the Thai version is the tension,
the spice. I think the draw of the Thai one is actually the spice.
No, but I do also like this. I don't know how
line.
I don't know how the Japanese is gonna do, because I do think a lot of the spice in the Thai version comes from also the choice of actors.
Yeah. And their chemistry and the way that they embody each of the, like, at least with like Payu and Rain, I think the way that they embody the characters,
they make me believe it. They make me
very
believe
believable.
It. Honestly, like
so I'll be
and everyone knows
how
that
they do.
My feelings about like the second half of that show. Like, I didn't even finish it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'll be interesting how they do the second couple's story.
Will they keep the storyline split? Like,
that's what I was wondering as well.
Because I think that will be a mistake. Because I think that was what hurt the Thai version.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But then we've got actually no, I think if they don't split it at all, because everyone knows like the Rain Payu storyline and like what the certain things that happen throughout their little story journey, if they spread that out and weave I've forgotten what the others are called, weave them in, Sky and something, whatever.
Prapai, yeah.
Prapai, Sky and Prapai. Weave their story in. I think people will keep people are going to keep watching for the story of Rain and Payu and to see
Yeah.
each little relationship milestone that we know and like the spice level increase for them. I think that'll keep people watching. So if they weave it in, the Sky
But
Pie, it'll keep
yeah,
people watching to the
but
end.
also, do you think, because we, like, from what we've heard from before, Mame is very peculiar about how she likes her shows to be. Do you think they have the go
If
ahead
they
to
signed,
change
yes,
anything?
if she signed a contract with a Japanese production company. And so, like, you know how when like GMMTV signed their contract to do the Japanese the Thai adaptations of the Japanese shows,
Yeah.
there were like very strict ways that they had to kind of do their marketing, their promotion, the series
Yep.
itself. I think that flipped the other way, the Japanese production companies are going to say, we want your story because we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to sign a contract that says, oh, we can do whatever the hell we want with it. And you either sign that contract and give us the story or we don't do it. And I think that that's kind of what's potentially happened.
I hope
and
that's
so they're
what
going
happened
to do,
and not the other way around.
yeah,
'Cause-
I think because the companies have such a strong idea of how they want their series to go, that they would.
I think it also depends on the company, like how much pull they have in general. If they're a newer company who just like wants in
True.
to the market, it
yeah.
will. Yeah.
I still think that they would have a very like, their contract would be pretty strict, and they've either said, we're taking your story for inspiration and we're kind of doing how we want with it, or they have signed a contract that says, we'll do your story how your story is set, and then we're fucked. Like,
it will be so interesting to
it
watch
has to
what comes out of it.
change.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do an adaptation without changing something.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I think they've got that. I think they've got it locked, and they're going to do what they want with it.
Yeah, I think if we continue talking now, we're gonna talk until tomorrow. So I will say it's tomorrow in 15 minutes for me.
Yeah. I was going to say, actually, I feel like some of that could be pulled for the patrons for their own little
Right.
their own little episode from this.
It's better to have a lot to say about something than nothing at all.
We had a
100%.
lot to say, especially about the toxic part.
It's so complex.
I think it's because, and I think it's because we've spoken so much in detail in previous episodes about why we love the comfort types of BL, the sweet BLs, and the nostalgia associated with it. So because we hadn't delved into the toxic side too deeply in a very long time,
It is a little
if
bit
not ever,
controversial.
it's I think we had a lot more to say in this episode about it.
Yep. Did you have anything you wanted to add? I think we covered everything.
Yeah, probably just to reiterate what we've been saying throughout the whole thing, that we're not making any moral comments on what people enjoy and how they enjoy their shows.
Yep. You do you.
And that having you do you, and that having the spectrum, like we're all for having the spectrum of Japanese BL because of the fact that it gives many different stories and many different ways to tell a story.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember is that even whatever you enjoy yourself, you just need to be a little bit careful about throwing it, like forcing it down other people's throats, to be honest. Like, you can agree on liking something, you can disagree on liking something. That's fine.
We do here at Lovecast.
We do
all the time.
In real time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, well, that's it for our episode this week. Please let us know which you prefer, the toxic yaoi or the youthful romance, or maybe something in between. I think
Dark
that
side.
I think that we all lie in different places on the spectrum depending on what the show is. So
Yeah.
personally, we like a little bit of all of it.
Mhm.
But if you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. And while you're at it, please share this episode with a friend. It really helps us out. You can also check out our Patreon, where we do early access to episodes, reviews. We're starting to do extra content that is basically like topics that we talk about that you guys suggest for us. So basically a lot of exclusive content on the Patreon, so check that out. But I think that's all we have for you guys this week. So until next time, bye.
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 I'm so chill.
Jesus, I just woke up.
It's 10 p.m. on Saturday night. I'm having some soju, okay?
You know what? That's so fair. I have
That's so fair.
mango nectar. So
Oh, it's plum soju. I got it
Oh.
from my friends because it's like the one thing they know I like.
did you just hit yourself?
No. You saw nothing.